Hi, it's Matthew Quilliam here, back with another video, this time with a U-Bass or bass ukulele shootout. Most people know me as a ukulele player, but I'm also a bass player, basically anything with 4 strings. I play the upright bass, and I play the vertical bass, or the bass guitar, and of course the bass ukulele as well. Now, this video is specifically aimed at people looking to get a bass ukulele, either if you already play the bass or you've never played the bass in your life, and talking about the various different types, specifically comparing acoustic with electric U-Bass, and thinking about which one might be best for you as your first time U-Bass purchase. But first, what is a U-Bass? Well, a normal bass guitar is, well, a guitar-sized instrument, but it plays the low notes, the bassy notes. And that's great, and obviously the bass is used in loads and loads of music. But these ukulele basses combine the small portability of a ukulele with the low end of a bass. So it's like playing a ukulele, but all your notes come out really low. And for that reason, that makes them very attractive to a lot of people. Some people need something small, light and portable, and these sound just like basses but with that compact size. So that makes them a great option for those sorts of players, especially if you're a double bass player. Then lugging that on a train or whatever is going to be an absolute nightmare. So taking one of these smaller things around with you is going to be the much preferable option. The other thing as well is, compared to all the other types of bass instruments, is that the notes are closer together, as in the frets are physically smaller. The distance on a regular bass guitar, well, the first fret might be that big, and sort of talking about an inch or more, but here the notes are nice and close together, which means that you don't have to stretch as far. So if you're someone with small hands maybe, or mobility issues, you don't have as far to move, which maybe makes it more comfortable and easier to play. Or on the other hand, if you're someone who likes to stretch, you can now stretch even further because you can fit more music, more frets under the hand. But don't let the size put you off. Both of these still pack a punch, a really bassy punch, especially when you put them through an amp. And if you were to just ask someone to listen but close their eyes as they were doing so, they'd never know that it was a smaller instrument rather than a full-size one. But okay, let's break down the two. First of all, let's talk about the electric U-Bass. Now, the electric U-Bass is obviously a much thinner instrument, as all electronic instruments are, because you don't need the sound chamber for the music to sort of resonate around in and project. It's all done electronically. The strings move about, and then magnetic pickups sense that movement and turn the movement into noise. So if you're someone who appreciates a thinner design body, then this could be an option for you. And the strings that come on this are steel strings, just like an electric bass guitar as well. Usually they will be wound strings. That will be a central core with wire wrapped around it to create a normal string. However, they do scrape a bit sometimes, so you can also get flat wound strings for U-Bass as well. This is where the thing that wraps round is sort of flattened off, so there's no ridges, but you get a slightly more mufflier sound. So the normal wound strings, the non-flat wounds, have a little bit more definition and diction, and you can get some great slap bass kind of sounds out of this, especially in the higher register. This one's obviously been designed to play up high with the nice cutaway and all of those juicy frets all the way up there. And you'll get a lot of definition. Even if you put the flat wounds on, it's still a great bass. It's going to sound like a proper electric bass, so you're going to get a lot of presence with those non-flats as well. This particular version is a 5-string. Of course, it is available in a 4-string, and I'm sure you can get 5-string acoustics. This just happens to be the one I have. But even the low B, which is a really low pitch, on this small instrument works fine. Sounds great, as you'll hear in the demo in a moment. Despite the thinner body, though, it is actually quite a bit heavier than the acoustic bass, and that's because it's full of electronic stuff. So all the pickups and everything, all the wiring, cabling, etc., that's all compact in here. So it is actually a bit of a heavier option. So if you're someone who's looking for a lighter instrument, then you might want to consider an acoustic, which is basically a hollow box. But at the end of the day, this is just like playing a short scale electric bass guitar. So obviously if you're familiar with that, then you kind of can imagine what that's like, and if you've never played bass before, well, it's not too dissimilar to a normal bass. So in that sense, there's no extra hurdles or anything to overcome. It's just like playing a regular bass, but everything is a little bit closer together. You're going to get some fine definition and diction, especially up on the high end there, lots of nice juicy sustain, and a really powerful tone with an electric U-Bass. Coming to an acoustic U-Bass now. So this is a bit thicker than the electric bass, so you need to be able to support a larger instrument. However, if you're used to playing a ukulele, this shouldn't feel too much bigger. It's only slightly bigger than a baritone ukulele. But it is lighter, a lot lighter, because it's just a hollow box at the end of the day that allows for those deep sounds to resonate and project acoustically. Of course, with the electric bass, you are going to need to plug into an amp, but you don't have to with an acoustic bass. So that's actually something else to point out about the electric as well, is that if you're budgeting for an electric bass, especially an electric U-Bass, say your budget is £500, well, you could spend £500 on an acoustic bass, but if you have a hard limit of £500, you're more likely looking at the £300 mark for the electric, so you've got a couple of hundred left over for an amp as well. That's just, of course, a random scenario I plucked out of my head, and there are basses and amps available at all price ranges. And of course, you can plug most acoustic basses into an amp as well. But that's just something to point out, that you will need the extra space and money to dedicate towards an amp if you go down the electric route, whereas this can just be played on its own. Now, of course, it's not going to be as punchy and as loud without the amp, but it has a nice projection nevertheless. So if you are in an acoustic setting, an acoustic jam, and you just want a little bit of bass support without it being too sort of oomphy and powerful, then this is still going to project enough to be heard and just add something to it. Generally speaking, the sound from any acoustic bass instrument, whether it's the acoustic ukulele or the acoustic double bass, whereas on an electric instrument it's really defined and clear and sort of poppy and bright. On an acoustic, it's going to be more of a low rumble, a gentle simmer at the bottom there to support the bottom end, but it's not necessarily so much about the notes, it's more about the feeling of it, something you can feel. And actually, a lot of the time when you're playing an acoustic bass, if you notice it, then something's probably gone wrong. It should just be in the background. You don't even notice it's there until it's gone, sort of thing. So you're going to get much more of a low rumble with this rather than a more poppy kind of sound with the electric. But of course, that is just a personal preference in terms of tone. So if you're playing sort of more jazzy things, softer things, or you're in more acoustic settings where you just want a bit of bass, but you don't want it to be too powerful and overpowering, then the acoustic's the way to go. But if you want some more power, sustain, and maybe even to do a few twiddly bits, solo bits, the electric's more up your street in that regard. However, of course, you've got the 4 strings. Both of these are tuned like a normal bass, if I hadn't said that already. Got lots of frets. This particular one has a cutaway. They don't all do, but if you do want to get up high, then you have the option there. These rubber strings could also be replaced with steel strings, just like on the bass. However, before you do that, it is worth checking to see if the bass has a truss rod. You see, steel strings are really tense, and what they can do is they can pull the neck down, and so it has a rod, a truss rod, through up the neck, to mean that you can adjust it every so often, so it's kind of like a constant battle. However, not all basses will, and so if there's no truss rod, you don't want to put steel strings on, because otherwise, if you can't fight back against that, it's just going to snap and break the neck off, which is a bit rubbish. This one has the truss rod, so I could put steel strings on if I wanted to, and that would give me a closer sound to the electric bass, especially when plugged into an amp. Acoustically, it might be a little bit quieter. So if you want some projection, stick with the rubber strings, and specifically rubber strings. These are the Thunder Blacks from Aquila. I believe there are white ones as well. In fact, I know there are. I used to play them, but they were a little bit stickier. And these Thunder Blacks were sort of the second generations. They're a bit smoother to the touch, less sort of sticky, so easy to play and glide over these strings. So there you go, a supposedly quick comparison between an acoustic ukulele bass and an electric ukulele bass. Both are very similar, both played like a regular bass, but they do have their differences. And if you're looking at getting a bass for the first time, and a ukulele bass, then hopefully I've given you some thoughts about which one you might prefer. So it's been really nice being able to compare these seemingly similar but also quite different instruments in this way. Do you want to see more instrument comparisons like this or more U-Bass videos? Do let me know in the comments below. And in the meantime, while you're down there, feel free to subscribe and like the video as well. And I've got another video just like this one over here that you can watch right now. I'll see you there.